Block 28 of the Tunisian sampler Afghan is the pebble block, which you see here. And to make this, I've gone ahead. Most of the patterns, you'll find you're creating the pattern on the first half of the row. This, with the pebbles, you create the pebbles on the last half of the block. So for the first half, I just simple stitched, go through each post and bring up a loop till I was all the way across. Then I yarned over, drew through one, and then yarned over and draw through two just to get around the corner. To actually make the pebble, what you do here is you chain 3, and then yarn over, draw through 2. Then you're going to yarn over, draw through 2 one more time. And you're going to yarn over and draw through 2 after each one of these chains that you make, so that you get spacing in between them like we are showing here. We have a space between each pebble that's shown here. Oops. Again, I'm trying to do this through my phone. And one more time. And yarn over, draw through 2. And I'm just going to go all the way across now, just to save some time, and plus the fact that I'm running low on yarn. If you haven't noticed, I'm using my scrappy ends for these tutorials, so. Okay, so now we're going to start the next row, and the first half is just your basic simple stitch all the way across. And when you get to your first loop, go ahead and bring through, and then you just kind of push it through, and that's what makes your pebble. And just kind of push it through, and then the next one there. So you get the idea. Now let's look at the block. If you're doing the blocks the same way that I am, where you're adding it onto your sashing, let me back up a bit. Each one of these pebble rows alternate. You have 5 pebbles on one row, and then the next row will have 4 pebbles, and those pebbles are staggered, where they start are made in between the spacing that you had from the previous row. And so you go back and forth, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, all the way up. The pattern itself has you start with 4 and then go 4, 5, 4, 5, and end with 5 at the top, so that you're doing 10 rows of these pebbles with them staggered. I changed it a little bit. First off, because I'm not following their number of rows and their number of stitches in the chain for each row. And because of that, I wanted this to be centered. If you are doing these blocks individually, go ahead and follow their instructions as far as, how long your chain is and how many rows you do. But I decided, since I have 29 rows, I really wanted to do 9 rows, not 10. That gave me 20 rows left, which I would put 10 below and 10 above. So that made that nice and easy. Plus, I like the effect of, rather than starting with, say, 4 rows and then ending with 5 rows on the top, I'd rather end with the same number to make it look more square. So I did 9 rows. Now, to determine the right and the left, since I'm using a different number than they are, I'm using 36 stitches, and so I had to figure out where to start this first loop. And so to do that, I had to count the posts in between. And so I have, since my first row is 5, I have 2, 4, 6, 8 posts that are in between. And I subtracted that from 36 to get 28. So that means that I basically have to have 14 simple stitches on this side, and then 13 plus the end stitch on this side. and I'm doing this in the last half of the row. So you do your simple stitch all the way across. So then I just yarned over and drew through 2 14 times before I did my first chain. Then I yarned over, drew through 2, next one, and I did that 5 times. Then I just yarned over and drew through 2 all the way across. And then when I come back, you just do your basic simple stitch and push your pebbles through. Then the next row, you're going to draw through 2 until you have passed this point right here before you start making your chain for this one. And then once you've got that first row done, you're going to find it very easy to go back and forth with it. That's the pebble stitch. And frankly, not a very pretty block the way that they have it laid out, but I did want to follow the Tunisian, let's see, what's the official name here? An Afghan stitch sampler. It's leaflet 2501 for those at leisurearts.com, for those that are following along with the pamphlet. I did want to more or less follow their patterns. This is a neat thing, a neat pattern to do all kinds of things with. You can make stars out of it, diamonds. Like I mentioned on a previous block, you can form letters with it, like B-A-B-Y for baby, a child's name, you know, a surname, all kinds of things. So that's the pebble block. And I've also heard it referred to as the popcorn stitch. You'll see that in other patterns, and it's essentially made the same way. They may vary the number of stitches in the chain, but it's essentially made the same way. Thanks for watching.